I think we're ready to go. So, I'm Ville, and we're from Home, just to briefly introduce ourselves. So, Home is a strategy consultancy, and we do strategy for the real world. Basically, what it means is that we solve problems, the tricky problems, through the social sciences by deeply understanding the world, observing its beauty and misery, and aiming to change it in subtle yet profound ways to directions that really matter. I think where the name comes from and where our kind of ethos comes from is that I think we work with language. We work with ways of creating shared understanding of the reality of the world. And we would like to say that there are two different kinds of languages you usually use in order to understand where we are. One is kind of more traditional language of strategy, numbers. And we would like to say that it's kind of the day language of logic, language of science that aims to control the reality. And then there is another kind of language, the kind of night language, nocturnal language. It's a language of arts and humanities, social sciences, that basically kneels before the mysteries of life. And I think thus kind of poem is this kind of epitome of that sort of a way to understand the different mysteries of life and find directions through that. Basically, we, as all organizations, I think we were shocked a few months back when the whole systemic effects of COVID-19 started to ramble all over the society and market. And what we did is that I think that was our response to really start to understand what this new reality looks like. So you could say that when kind of contagion really alters the social bonds, that really makes us human. I think it's a moment when something very profound changes. We don't anymore kind of know what's going on. And at such times, kind of the talk turns easily to survival, not really collective thriving on solidarity. We try to make sense of how the hell are we going to actually go through all this and stay alive while doing it. But I think in reality, I think it's paradoxical that kind of surviving requires that in this sort of a human profound moment, we really explore alternate routes forward that come from real compassion for ourselves and for others. And I think that was the starting point for our work. We want to understand what those alternate routes might be. Basically, there are three principles of kind of living and understanding this post-normal condition. The first one being is that kind of we need to think in new terms the moment we are in. There's been a lot of talk about like what's the new normal will be like, what's next, what will be kind of when we get to the moment of normalcy again, when things feel normal. But I think we've experienced such kind of massive systemic shock that the idea of normal needs to be challenged. And basically, we propose the concept of post-normal for this task. The reason being is that kind of life in general, individual lives, societies, markets, ecologies, they're all systems without clear boundaries or clear definitions. And kind of the social reality is never just an average that you can measure with a yardstick. all these things change, or our lives evolve through all kinds of anomalies, deviances from average, that create unpredictable twists in seemingly stable systems such as health, our careers, or company growth. So basically, we live in a world of kind of extremes. I think Nassim Nicholas Taleb has been writing quite a lot about this same phenomenon, but I think it has shown its power right now. These extreme phenomena totally change the way we live. And I think this kind of classic meme now feels very relevant again, kind of a little bit updated with the coronavirus as one of the collapse narratives. But today, I think we will really experience a truly post-normal state of affairs. And there are no clear precedents or really familiar strategies for moving forward. And there is no really any way to go back either, or even getting things under control. This situation has caused us, individuals, leaders, teams, organizations, basically time after time. Now, when you look and hear what people are talking about, people have lost the plot, and many have retreated into this survival mode. But to really find the plot again, I think what needs to happen is that we need to first accept that there is no such thing as normal. Kind of, we need to accept that the kind of collapse cult reality is something that we need to deal with, and it's really something that we haven't seen before. And here, in order to kind of change the narrative from collapse cult into new utopians, I think we need to, again, try to shift our attention from survival with collapse to kind of ways of being value for each other. And this is the reason why the second principle is being of value over creating value. Because I think the pandemic has made us really painfully aware of the different accidental outcomes of our actions that echo and mutate across the systems that we're part of. To really frame kind of our task now in this situation, I think it's beneficial to frame it as being of value over creating value, because this way you start to expand your focus from, say, customer experiences or kind of user benefits to really human and more than human outcomes, community and ecosystem consequences, and from immediate success to lasting impact. And I think this idea of being of value really starts from comprehending the different realities of life. All the shifts, all these nuances in what matters. Now the evolving everyday behaviors, something that we don't do anymore and something that we do because of the change situation, something that we've learned because of this experience and something that we maybe haven't yet. But I think to understand that reality is this fantastic assemblage of not only individuals, but organizations, institutions, market societies, ecologies. And I think starting to understand, like, how can we be of value in these sort of systems with as many kind of participants in these systems as possible. And I think the companies that do this now right, they kind of start from the ideas of not user experiences, say, but ideas of care and solidarity, really trying to work with strategies that now aim to protect and increase things like lasting joy, health, safety, or equality. And the third main principle is called living strategies over strategic rigor. The idea is basically that what we call traditional strategy tools, ways to map the reality as we see it in our offices, basically. These tools have lost their edge. Like crunching the numbers, looking at the companies and markets as we perceive them is not the way to create grip of the reality. Because reality is not a logical system that can be captured by this seemingly rational thought. And this has become really obvious in this moment of change. You could say that kind of these traditional approaches to strategy are more like drawing a map of kind of this, our reality, our territory, and plotting the imagined future path over that map. But now in this situation when kind of things are in flux, these territories do not exist anymore when basically, metaphorically speaking, we enter the journey and then realize that, hey, landscape is nothing like we imagine it would be. And on the contrary, I think living strategies for this sort of situation should work as compasses, if you will, kind of systems for making the best decisions as we traverse the changing landscape. And for this, what we've done now with the Postnormal Playbook is that we kind of plotted 3 different horizons of time, horizons of scope, and also horizons of impact, where we need to think different strategies, different decisions for different outcomes. And I think it requires that we basically think that kind of future is not a distant thing. It's something that is now with us. The only moment we have is now. So basically it just says that in this very moment, we need to think simultaneously kind of the ways we can be of value for always, kind of be aligned by our purpose and a big mission in this society. And at the same time, thinking what we do next, how we kind of can achieve those missions, those purposes with our current actions. So being in the moment, but being aware of these different horizons of our actions is really important. So the question is, if this is the new reality, the post-normal world, the corona scene that we need to kind of learn to live with and now learn to play with, how should we do it? So we have 15 different strategic plays over those 3 horizons, and you can of course go and read them through. That was kind of an introduction and kind of pointers to different directions. But for this session, we wanted to kind of simplify this reality a bit and highlight 5 important narratives that basically go through these different strategic plays and through across these horizons. What we're doing next is that we're continuing to develop different tools for really to put these sort of plays into action. So those will be in the making next, and we're eager to share them with you as they come ready. But for now, I think we have some ideas how to start to play with these ideas. So I think if we start from really from the basics, the first main theme is essentialism. I think that is the new core of post-normal strategies. I think uncertainty has made essential basically the new black. Both kind of customers, people in general, organizations are being reassessing for the past couple of months, like what's too much, what is enough, what do I need, what is the basic necessity that is really more highly valued, more important in my life than anything else. On the other hand, I think what has happened is that that's kind of the everyday evaluation of necessities that's going on. But kind of these sort of massive situations of change have also kind of urged people to think what makes life truly worth living? And I think that's kind of the ultimate existential question, and one that the situation has forced us to search new answers. These are questions that are relevant for not only for kind of people or consumers or customers or users, but also for organizations. We've been looking like the different narratives and shifts in the different areas of life. Like what has been the kind of things that have changed or shifted in importance in the past months? There's been a kind of obvious developments from new rhythms in everyday lives to focus on domestic experiences, from cooking to snuggling to binging. There's been also a lot of shift in ways to kind of organize life, purifying it in metaphorically speaking as well as in very practical ways. Finding kind of escapes from the current realities through virtual adventure. Taking care of one's home, improving it, learning new things, but also trying to kind of stay afloat and realigning finances, as well as taking care of one's health, and really importantly also mental health. These sort of things have now popped up in importance in the past couple of months. And one could say that these are all things that will be relevant in the coming months as well, maybe even years. Because I think what we've seen is that it has created sort of a value reset, if you will, where we had to start to evaluate what really matters. And in a way, you could say that all these different kind of changed nuances in everyday experiences and values have opened new possibilities for companies to be of value. And now the question is that, how could you do that? What would be the best ways to actually be there for people and help them live better lives? So this leads to the second theme that we call contingency. And that's the norm for thinking different opportunities or plotting strategies in this new reality. Contingency basically hints the fact that we live in a world that doesn't fit into models, basically. Even if we spent the last couple of months really staring different exponential curves and trying to make sense on really kind of what is called log level. So the most granular level you can plot data into your system and trying to understand like what the hell is going on. But now I think it's high time to look beyond numerical data or these graphs, presentations of different probabilities of how contagion is now playing in society. And really to learn to dance with complexity, as we like to say. I think we need to now look the world anew, kind of augment our statistics with first an understanding of the actual world. What's behind these numbers? Because I think these different areas of lives, they are not static and they won't be static. So we need to approach them as kind of, in a way, as kind of alternative futures and start to create these bets. Could this be valuable in these sort of situations? And of course, I think contingency is important in a way that there is not only kind of this one viral curve that requires flattening, but actually there are many curves that we need to understand that needs to be flattened at the same time. In a way, kind of this health curve is one. We should now aim to understand the shifts, how we can focus on absence of disease, and at the same time, abundance of well-being. On top of that, there is of course the curve of equality, because the economic depression might be unprecedented, which has been one of the most popular new words now popping up in everybody's vocabulary, according to Google Trends. But yeah, so I think what needs to happen is that at the same time, we need to understand how we can move towards kind of absence of inequity and abundance of collective thriving, regardless of the new economic situation, which might take very, very different shapes in the next months and years. And on top of that, I think the third curve that needs to be flattened is the curve of biosphere. And we need to focus on the absence of extinction and abundance of livability in the world in general. So I think to put things into perspective, I think contingencies there is no way to now go back to new normal and start thinking that this is kind of the new way how people go back to the movie theaters and we start to shop things, and this is what needs to happen because economy depends on us consuming more. Nope. I would say that what needs to happen is that we understand these different contingencies that will break the normalcy again and again, and at the same time try to understand how can we flatten all these curves. Because in many ways we've been discussing quite a lot that kind of the pandemic, in a way, it was perhaps only a dress rehearsal for a climate crisis. And what needs to happen throughout this decade is that we need to kind of stabilize the rapidly destabilizing biosphere. And that will require huge shifts in all behaviors that we now kind of started to understand that can be shifted. The third theme for creating place with the post-normal is that we need to think consequences as the new goals. In a way, this comes from the idea that there are no externalities. There are just effects. And the classical economic modes of thinking have tried to lure us to think that, okay, there is this realm of money or realm of business or realm of profit that is insular from outside world. But of course, that's not how the world works. Everything is connected. We live in one big mesh where every and each part is totally dependent on everything else. So basically what we need to do to find the new strategic goals for the brand, the products, is that we need to shift the attention from experiences to consequences, from aesthetics more to ethics, from luxury to benefit, and from personal to public. This is one of the big insights from the pandemic that might help us cure this myopia of conventional thinking. This has been very visible now across different sectors. And we've seen how kind of fashion brands from the big houses to small individual designers have shifted from creating new collections to producing masks. And I think those are very interesting immediate ways how kind of new strategies have taken effects and how individuals and companies are trying to be of value for the customers, employees, as well as kind of every other participant in their value system. And they've really started from these ideas of care and solidarity and working with the strategies that aim for lasting joy, health, safety, equality. And I think it's really interesting to see how these kind of effects are now kind of spilling over the immediate crisis and how they will change the ways how companies actually create their products. Some of the fashion houses have now challenged, for example, this in a way that they said that, okay, we're not anymore ever going to go back to the kind of traditional cycle of different seasons, but we take this in this kind of creative process in our own hands and focus on creating the collections when we want to do it. Saint Laurent, for example, did recently just that. The fourth theme is called automation or automata. That is the tool for playing with the post-normal. Automation, I think it's a way to talk about digital. It's a way to talk about kind of different technological contemporary systems based on information, and it's a way to talk about the more kind of leading edge of technologies such as machine learning or AI. Really kind of help to understand what kind of means we have in our disposal for creating new kinds of services or products for being of value. What has happened now, because kind of contagion has forced this physical distance between people and between bodies, there's been a lot of shift in automation and virtual services. One of the plays that we describe in the playbook is called virtual double. That's kind of the hot take, the immediate kind of way for many of the companies to shift into new ways of serving people. There's been a lot of interesting cases in telemedicine, in simulated sports, in online education, etc. But I think we need to kind of look even further when we kind of look beyond flattening the curve and then trying to kind of operate our businesses in this situation of social distance. But I think we need to really understand like what automation is good for, and to make really automation work for us. I think the important thing is that we kind of help augment people as well as augment other organizations in their pursuit of good life. And I think this is really important, as kind of automation as well as digital services are something that we can optimize for several different outcomes. And now I think it's important that we choose the right kind of outcomes. For example, long-term outcomes, optimized systems for health, comfort, safety, not for engagement, efficiency, savings or earnings. Because I think short-term metrics are usually bad proxies for things that really matter in life. And I think looking forward, as kind of more and more social places will be transformed into new kinds of apps and services, as different domains of work are being rapidly digitized. I think we'll see automation on unforeseen levels in the next few years, already in the next few months. And it's a world where kind of algorithms do things automatically with us, for us, and without us. And these are kind of massive systemic takes. It's not rocket science, if you will, but it's systemic design of services that lead us to new connections with each other, as well as the physical realities of the world. And it's good to remember that automation is not something that can be applied for everything, as we have been talking a lot, is that automatic services can't still provide a vaccination for you. They can't feed you. They can't kind of take care of your health or to hold your hand. So there are a lot of ways where automation doesn't apply as such, but a lot of opportunities where it can now create this new layer of services in a world where distance is with bodies is not what it used to be. The final fifth theme is called stamina. I think that's the mode for all strategies and all organizations in the post-normal era. Because no one really knows the eventual outcomes or the extent of these systemic effects of this ongoing crisis. And there could be extraordinary wide range of possible outcomes in the coming months and years. This has been visible in the market already as different investors and different companies are now kind of betting into kind of slashing their ownings in say, airlines and betting on renewables, for example. But I think looking for stamina, looking for continuity, and looking for resilience in this situation is really important. And it requires that we kind of look durability across everything we do, kind of across workflows, across the supply chains, across distribution, across demand. And what kind of new markets are there that will provide us customers in chasing alternative scenarios and futures. The important thing is that this kind of resilience thinking and kind of in a way upgraded survival mode needs to go beyond this idea of surviving. It shouldn't be that, okay, we cut back spending and we optimize systems for efficiency kind of thing, because those are the really counter kind of actions for looking real continuity. Instead, what needs to happen is that we need to continue more responsive rhythms and flexibility across the organization and looser networks of suppliers and increase kind of essential redundancy in the ways we work. This journal was just discovered a couple of days ago. The fellow was hibernating after the winter under kind of this mudslide, and I think it really nicely highlights the idea of this more gentle velocity that we now need to understand and then kind of start to explore kind of how we used to live in a world where time and movement where the streaming river which just carried us away, the meetings next week, the goals next month, the opportunities next quarter, etc. But I think now for the past couple of months we all been swimming in small ponds with very few exits to these rivers of time available inside. And now I think the really big task for the post-normal era is that organizations and individuals need to explore more suitable pace and balance that connects with the existing realities, the new borders, the new limits for interaction, as well as this is maybe more in line with the somatic rhythms of our bodies and the kind of real life cycles of the biosphere and ecology. Because this is the opportunity maybe to kind of look beyond the cult of busy and really rethink how we work as organizations and how we produce value, how we think about growth, and how we kind of optimize our services for something that is really valuable for us now and next. So I think those are the main ideas from Postnormal Playbook. The big idea is that there is no normal. We need to focus on being of value, and we need to create really flexible living strategies. And these strategies need to focus on essentials. They need to understand that contingency is what kind of rules the world. There is no way to plan that we'll do this, but we can only kind of bet that could this work. We need to learn to use the most powerful means in our disposal to create and be of value through automation and the digital channels, because physical connection is not available as it used to be in the next coming years. And eventually, I think we need to then understand the new rhythms of operations, the gentle velocity that will help us to navigate more smoothly changing situation. So this was a brief summary, and I'd like to hear some comments from Minna and Konsta. What do you say, Minna? What kind of ideas you feel are most important?
Not sure what is, let me see. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We are in the same space, but I don't have headphones, so this is a bit tricky. I'm not sure which is, to be honest, the most important. And I mean, of course, I'm biased, I like them all. But one thing that I was really thinking a lot kind of actually last week was this kind of essentialism, in that sense that it's just so unique that we are in a situation where all over the world all people are kind of reassessing their essentials at the same time. And while saying that, I'm also very aware that not all people have that luxury. They have been doing it all the time. So if you're like dirt poor somewhere, then you have been probably thinking about the essentials very much like all the time. But let's say the people who are in a situation where they can kind of go back and think about what is essential in their lives are doing it at the same time in a scale that's just humongous at the moment. And I'm just thinking what comes out from that, what comes out from people thinking about it, but coming into different conclusions about what is essential. It's individual, it's cultural, it's different in different countries and different cultures and in different people. So that's something that I'm just really curious. And I think it's something that is maybe underestimated at the moment. It's kind of happening, but then it's maybe not registered in the scale that it should be. So yeah, that's really interesting. So.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a shift that now requires really contextual understanding of the realities, and then not going back to this mode of doing market research in a way that, okay, this is what the market in general looks like. But we really should look kind of across social strata, the different realities, the different experiences that people now have because of the new situation. For example, there will be a new kind of class of under or unemployed people. From 10 to 20 to 30% of the workforce will now be without the work as it used to be. And this idea of being in a constant flux between of jobs, be there kind of more traditional jobs or kind of micro jobs, doesn't matter. But this is a new experience, for example. What are the necessities in those sort of situations? Yeah. So the kind of market will look very different in what it used to be. What about you, Konsta?
Can you see me? Hi. I would just like to make a small comment before the Q&A to let also other people to ask questions. But I'd like to make a brief comment on, which is like, I think the overarching theme here, which is that I think the post-normal era just affirms already present societal flows and trends, like awareness of climate crisis and that kind of stuff. And I think when you talk about like the post-normal time and how the language of strategy is becoming increasingly important, I think what is, when I've been following like decision makers and politicians and so on. I think it's important now what is the truth, what is the language of science, and what is the language of ethics. But also I think in these times, in post-normal times, common sense is very important, which is, I think common sense is what to do something which is meaningful to people, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's really important. And I think going back to common sense and then kind of taking a more pragmatic approach in what we actually do. And I think that's something we basically, I think that happens for all of us in different kind of organizations, that we end up in this hubris of our own reality, where we are the best. We do this in a way that really matters, and I think this sort of situation has forced now us to face the reality that that's kind of what the world really needs, what is more important than anything else, and I think these are the big existential questions, but I think these need to be now answered in a very pragmatic ways to start with, but also of course thinking big and using common sense while being really more kind of informed about these different interlinked realities, say from climate crisis to economic depression to COVID, flattening all these curves at the same time. What about others? Is there questions, comments, ideas that you would like to point or share with us?
Hello guys, can you hear me?
Petri,
Anything? Can you hear me, guys?
can you? We can't hear you, right?
Yes, perfectly, actually.
All right, that's strange. Anyways, so
Can't hear you, Petri.
that's strange.
I can hear.
Okay.
So
No.
I can hear perfectly.
Okay.
All right. So a quick question. I think one of the most interesting themes in our time or in the post-normal era is that simultaneously we need to think about the longer term things, like the longer term impact when it comes to these micro things like climate change and the socio-economical disruption which is happening. But at the same time, we need to become faster and probably more predictive rather than reactive when it comes to doing new things and creating new products and services and these kind of things. And I think one of the most interesting challenges when it comes to our own field as professionals is to how to define these two timelines, because they are basically the same thing. But there's these companies used to work we need to have this shorter term effect, but rather now companies need to work with longer term impact while simultaneously predicting stuff instead of testing stuff which comes to the market and stuff like that. And I think there's a huge opportunity here to also renew the language of how we work, because these things are intertwined in the same kind of package in a way. Do you guys have any examples on how have companies or have people like us done this successfully yet, or it's still coming?
Have done successful of combining these rhythms fast.
Yeah, in this one new thing. Yes.
Yeah. Good question. I think what we've seen now is that many companies have managed to shift their focus. Say there's been a lot of hand sanitizer manufacturers popping up lately in a way that all the shelves in all the stores are now filled with all kinds of hand sanitizing products. So I think that has been one way how we've seen that kind of it's quite easy for many kinds of companies to start do something really different in a really rapid pace. But I think what's now still missing from that picture is that kind of slower pace is not there yet. So I think that's kind of the interesting thing. Like say, Cura Distillery is starting to make hand sanitizer, and now it's everywhere. And I think nobody will buy hand sanitizer in the next few weeks in that amount as it's available. So the big question is that like what's next? And I think that's the different kind of time horizon as well as the different pace of thinking, like what you do in the era of contagion and climate crisis and digital services, like and essentials, like how can you actually create value with new types of genes in that reality. So I think we haven't seen a lot those examples out there, maybe also because those are things that are not shared in public or in different campaigns. And I think it's because the situation has been around for only a couple of months, so there haven't been so many really thorough strategic projects even going on. So the work, for example, that we've done is been kind of continuous work from the previous era, where we ask different sort of questions, and we've been working these sort of projects. But I think now we increasingly need to start asking those things. Minna?
Yeah, I think so too. There are some signs, I think, and that remains to be seen. Like, for example, in the health sector, I can say that there is like, it's hard to say if they think what exactly they think on the long term, but there has been this kind of certain acceleration of things, obviously, and it makes a bit more sense than just starting to make hand sanitizer. But I think they are like certain things that have been ongoing that have taken a lot of speed lately, and maybe certain tangent when it's understood that okay, things will not be similar in the future. And I think that's actually interesting, not so much that if the direction itself has changed that much, but if the thinking inside those directions and like which things to accelerate now, that has changed a lot. But the real long term, I'm not sure if that has sunken in many places yet.
So I just quickly, I have a hypothesis.
Yeah, and I think that one example is like companies like Oura, which is now starting to collaborate with public officials with the contact tracing and giving information to public officials about their users and that kind of stuff. But what is the key here is they have to rethink their how they use their data, how they what kind of information they will let out for the public officials and so on. We are seeing that, for example, the fashion house Zara is starting to make masks and different kind of hospital equipment for the public health officials. So they have to make this public-private cooperation, and they have to think about their business again. Are they making profit? How they're making profit? And these kind of questions are popping up when you are dealing with the public, because this is a public thing, this is the pandemic itself. And now the private companies are enlarging their sphere of action. They are not only dealing with private users, but also dealing with the public. And this is super interesting for me.
Yeah. It is. But perhaps one last comment.
Yeah, maybe just one thing from my part, and I think many of us who are in this call are kind of people who do advise clients, and I think what we really need to advise them with is like, you know, just urging them to change their long term, to kind of like, you know, no, you're not going back. You have to find a new target. It might have consist of some parts of what you have done before, but really kind of just try to open their eyes to the fact that they need to go also back to basic things, why they exist and what are they actually providing to people. I think I think Ville, you came up with this being of value, and I think that really nails it. Like, don't just think how you create value tomorrow and then you gain from it and then everybody's happy and cheery and everybody wins, which is kind of not working right now very well. So it's really kind of, how do you see yourself? What's your position in people's and planet's life in the coming years? And it's not an easy message, and some people will be kind of respond to that. Some people will be probably like, well, I just want to go back to normal.
Well, I think lastly,
in many ways it goes
two
back
things
to
here.
the very fundamental idea that I think the new collective way to understand the situation is, I think, that wasn't there before, is the idea of flattening the curve. That is one of the massive implications of this situation, that collectively we have this idea now. We need to act and flatten the curve. And now when we understand the world as different curves, and then behind these curves there exist, of course, kind of all kinds of realities. But if we kind of simplify the world in these curves, be they exponential or polynomic or whatnot, so the idea is that we need to understand that there is not just a single curve that we need to deal with. But I think the three curves that now are more important than anything else are the curves of health, contagion, as well as mental health. So understanding this kind of bodily implications of these situations as one big curve that needs to be flattened. The second one is the equality curve, because the economy won't be what it used to be. So I think as Zara is playing kind of this public role now and trying to make their massive operation to be of value in this situation, what could they do next? How they could take care of this inequality curve and start to flatten that. Maybe pay more for their suppliers, I don't know, do more lasting products perhaps. But importantly, I think this all kind of links back to the idea of the biggest curve that requires flattening the next 10 years' time. And I think that's the climate curve, the biosphere curve, the livability curve on the scale of the planet. And I think, or the kind of extinction curve. And I think understanding the post-normal in terms of these different curves helps us to align our strategies into common goals that really matter. Any questions still? We have a couple of more minutes. If anyone has comments.
There will be more talks and less about the presentation.
Yeah.
So it will be a different mode than today when we kind of went through
exactly
everything at the same time.
So we'll continue the Postnormal Talks in the coming weeks. We'll let you know when the next one is, most likely in 2 weeks' time on Wednesday at 10 a.m. It looks like we'll get Tom Zavikar, who was one of the partners in London-based think tank and consultancy called the Future Laboratory. And Tom has started his own company now recently called Avancer. He has also relocated to Oslo. And because we are now inviting people from different areas of strategy to really think about the consequences of these post-normal plays. So we'll most likely talk with Tom about the kind of climate opportunity and crisis and different ways how we need to realign our thinking and actions to actually flatten the biggest curve ever that requires flattening. So I think that's all from us right now, and it was a pleasure to have all of you with us here, and we're looking forward to see you guys. Join us to talk about flattening the curves in the few weeks' time and continue the discussion, because I think the only way we can really move forward is to do it together and share ideas, share knowledge, share thinking as much as possible. Great, but thank you from my behalf, and you'll find the recording from this session online shortly after the event, and looking forward to see you guys soon.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.